In our film opening, we have used a variety of techniques and conventions to help address and attract our audience. We have done this by trying not to make our story cliched, so we try to make it as unique as possible to help engage our audience. The main way we attracted our audiences is through the storyline itself. We decided to do a horror film about a zombie apocalypse. We got the inspiration and idea from the film 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later, which encouraged us to make a creative opening that would draw the attention of our audiences. We thought the more challenging the storyline, the bigger the interest of the audience would have for our opening. One very important way in which we attracted the audience is through mise-en-scène, and in particular makeup. We made sure the zombie makeup was professional and therefore looked much more realistic, which helped grab the attention of the audience as they would be convinced that they were actually zombies. The location also helped grab the audience's attention. As for our audience feedback, most people said they could remember the location the most. The location was very important as it fitted perfectly into our opening and looked very realistic, therefore the audience felt much more convinced. A further way in which we attracted audiences is by the music and soundtracks we used and helped create an ideal atmosphere that matched perfectly with our horror genre. The opening begins with the soundtrack of nature itself, which created an eerie vibe that helped us attract audiences as it was perfect in setting the tone to help create tension from the very start. We wanted to create the sense that something was not right and there was something bad about to happen. So as the zombies appear, music gets more tense, which attracts the audiences. The feedback we got from the audiences was that music was very tense, made them feel that they were in the zombie chase as well. They said that the soundtrack was perfect for that part of the action. The soundtrack of the zombies also engaged the audience, as it made them more and more engaged in the action as it sounded realistic and added to the tension. By having a convincing and professional product, we gave the audience a sense of realism for something that is not in the real world. We wanted the audience to be able to picture themselves in the same situation and believe that it could happen to them, which is a very important concept to us, as we wanted the audience to engage in the film as much as possible and want them to question what is going to happen next. We made sure that we followed the conventions of horror, keeping in mind the different films we analysed for our research. During the process of making the film opening, I have furthered my knowledge a great deal in technologies in the fields of computer software and camera equipment. Firstly, I learned how to use a DSLR camera properly after an incident during the first shoot. After reviewing the footage from the shoot, I found that a large chunk of what we shot was blurred beyond usage, so couldn't be used. For the second shoot, I learned how to focus the camera manually, which gave me better control, and from that shoot we got a much better quality of shot. Secondly, I learned how to use both Adobe After Effects and Final Cut Pro effectively. One of the shots we filmed was of the main character Jack shooting his pistol. Because the prop we used has working parts that made it look realistic, having just the sound of the gunshot as well would make it look bad, so I added in muzzle flash. It took quite a while to locate, place, keyframe and colour correct assets for the shot, but in the end it turned out really well and gave a good effect. Also, I created the timer scene near the start and end of the film in After Effects. To make these shots, I modified a simple script that created a countdown or count up timer. Within that script I could change the speed and the position the clock started in, so it was easy to get the rewinding animation. It did take a long time to create the shot because I had to fade in a new countdown timer every day to stop the clock counting into minus numbers, but it looked really professional and fit in with the rest of the opening perfectly. Final Cut Pro was the program I used to edit the film. The video editing software I normally use at home is Sony Vegas, because I don't have a Mac, so I learned how to use Final Cut Pro as well. Final Cut Pro does share some similarities with Vegas, but other things I had to find out by playing around with the software. For example, video fade. In Vegas, every clip in the timeline has a little slider bar that allows the user to fade out the video at the speeds he or she wants and the layers that they want, which allows for a lot of control over clips. In Final Cut Pro, however, the video transition effect has to be applied between two clips that can only be changed slightly, which in my opinion is much more restricted. This meant restrictions when it came to credits. I wanted to have the credits fade out between shots, but every time I tried to apply a fade to it, it faded out the rest of the video with it. A good aspect of Final Cut Pro was the library of transitions and effects it had. With that menu we applied the colour correction that you see, which made it darker and helped make the film look more like an apocalypse. Also, we found the perfect title for the film. Looking through the fonts, we found a grungy stencil type font that went really well with the theme of the film, and a VCR rewind effect that made it really look like it was rewinding to before the apocalypse. When looking back at our preliminary task as a group and individually, we have all noticed that there has been a lot of progression of skills, and our knowledge has improved vastly throughout the term. We have also gained more experience with Final Cut Pro, as our team was not too familiar with it when we started doing our preliminary task. We have also discovered many hidden secrets that we didn't find when doing our preliminary tasks, such as sound effects, lighting, and the ability to fast forward and use slow motion that has helped us a lot to make the clean cuts that we have now used in our main task. The preliminary task was a big help for me personally and our group, because nobody in our group was familiar with Final Cut Pro or used anything like it, so it has helped us get a grip and understand the tech and equipment. So when we came to the main task, we were fully aware of the user interface and knew what to do and how to do it. Our preliminary task was a 14-second clip which consisted of one person walking across a room and sitting down at a table with another person and them two engaging in a conversation. There's a big difference between our preliminary task and the main task, because the preliminary task was very simple and included no sense of creativity. Since the preliminary task, as a group I felt that we've progressed a great deal, as beforehand we did not really understand how to attract the audience successfully. The image quality was bad on the preliminary task, so we began to realise that the image quality was really important to us, and luckily someone in our group had a DSLR camera which we used. There's a massive improvement between the preliminary and the main task, because as I said, the preliminary was very simple, basic, with no background music, and there were sounds of the classroom. However, in the main task we decided to be organised and create a storyboard with a script presented professionally. We also added background music, sound effects, image corrections to suit our genre, and make it look more like a professionally made film.